Hey guys, Walt here with TAV. One thing I want to try to go over, we have a lot of questions on tires and what we recommend when we're building clients' trucks and what we use. And I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds with some of the stuff on tires, but I'm going to go over some basic obvious changes or obvious differences in these tires and what you could use these for and what to expect out of them. And I'm going to show you some physical differences here. So we've got a stock Michelin tire off of a Ram, and this is just on what you would get on a 2022 Ram 3500 street tire. We've got a all-terrain tire. We've got a Toyo, the new RT Trail, and a Toyo Open Country Mud Terrain. Then we've also got it sitting next to a Yokohama Mud Terrain. So I want to show you kind of some basic, some obvious differences and why these tires are kind of set up the way they are and what the tread design is for and how that can benefit your build as opposed to, something a little more aggressive if your build's going to be kind of mild to a fully aggressive build, and where you would want to use these tires in the best use case scenario. So kind of starting out on the end, this is what you would find on most new vehicles. It's a fairly inexpensive tire for the manufacturer to get and just make the same on all of the vehicles. It'll do fine. You'll get the best fuel economy out of one of these tires because when you look at the tread blocks themselves, they're right up against each other. There's like no spacing in between the shoulder lugs or the center tread. So there's very, very little rolling resistance in that. And all of these edges that you see serve a purpose. So you have a wear bar that's down in between. It's just like a little bump down in there. Most of the time you're not going to run your tires down to that wear bar, which indicates you need to get a new tire. But all of these edges, or these little grooves, is called siping. And you have biting edges for when you're under power and you're under a load. You've got the front face to all of these, but then you have a braking edge as well, which is the opposite side. So when you look at the direction of travel when you're moving forward, you will see the tread tend to wear a specific way when it's under your drive axle, and let's say in the back of a truck. You'll see the front edge of all of these, the siping, wearing a certain way. So you can see which edges are biting when you're under power, and then when you're braking, the opposite edge of that is what is basically creating traction for you when you're braking and you're under power. What is important about that is if you put this on dry pavement or even in the rain, it'll do really well. You've got the more edges you have for biting and the biting edges, you have more traction there. If you have a large flat space, just a big block of rubber, that's just a flat expanse of rubber touching the ground. There's not much traction in that unless it's extremely soft, where you wouldn't have an extremely soft tire like that on a daily driven vehicle because it'll wear out super fast. But something like this is going to clog up extremely fast in mud or snow, slushy snow, stuff like that. Some snow tires, though, have a lot of siping and a lot of smaller tread blocks, but there can be a lot more spacing in between to help it clean itself out and shed water out and away when you have the weight of the vehicle on the ground and there's that layer of snow or sand or mud or whatever it may be between the ground, the hard packed ground, whatever material that is between the tire and the ground can escape from the tread blocks. As you can see, there's no spacing here for anything to move between the blocks and shed itself away. But this tire you'll get the most amount of miles out of. It'll be the most efficient because there's the least amount of rolling resistance going on here. And a lot of times the tire itself is a lot lighter too. So it's the most efficient in all cases. Kind of moving to an all-terrain, so this would be kind of a step up from what you would see here. The all-terrain, if you look, the tread blocks, the shoulder lugs are much larger. I mean, look at the shoulder lug here compared to here. These are offset, so that is a traction aid as well. So these are offset. It changes the noise, the sound on the tire itself, depending on the air pressure you're running. There's a lot of different variables here that'll change noise, but the weight of the tire like this will normally go up in weight considerably from this, just because you've got more going on here. This is a far stronger tire on the sidewall as well as the tread itself. A lot of times the rubber compounds are different between brands and manufacturers and things like that, but this is more of an off-road oriented tire that has really good road manners. There's a lot of different all-terrain tires, whether it's Nitto, Toyo, BF Goodrich, Goodyear, Firestone, Yokohama, you name it. A lot of companies have an all-terrain tire. That's what you'll typically see on a truck that is a daily driver. You want to get a good bit of miles out of it, but when you air down, you've got a good, strong tire. It's got great snow carrying, handling characteristics. A lot of them are 3-peak snow rated without actually being a studded tire where you can put metal studs in the lugs. Some of them you can do that to where you can get pretty good traction on snow and ice with that. But typically you'll see siping in a large tread block here. You'll see the siping in every tread block. Your center tread is different on an all-terrain tire as well. You can see a lot more spacing, and the tread lugs are angled in a way to where you will get a lot more traction from here to here if the tread lug is angled this way as opposed to perpendicular to your direction of travel. So if this whole tread lug was turned sideways, so this edge was perpendicular to where you're traveling, you're getting traction on that, but now it's elongated, so you have a longer tread biting surface and braking surface if it's turned to the side. So when you're under power and then when you're aired down, that lug turned to the side is going to give you a longer biting edge here, and it's going to be quieter. The more of an angle you have on these, if it's perpendicular to the direction of travel, you're going to create noise. And if it's turned this way, that is, you don't have this flat edge smacking the ground as the tire rolls around. So you're hitting a small point here, and that tread block is widening, giving you more traction because you have got siping here in this direction, you've got siping in multiple directions here. So when you've got traction when you're turning as well. So when you change the direction of this tire but you're still moving forward, now you want to turn, you need lateral stability in this tire too, in the tread block and the sidewall of the tire at different air pressures. So depending on how your tread is going to touch the ground, and now when you see it like this, it's open because the tire is round, so the tread blocks are all open and they're spaced apart. Well, when you've got the weight of the vehicle on the wheel and the tire pushing down on this, this flattens out on the ground. So all of these grooves close together, and whatever's inside there can either get squished out, and you've got these suction grooves and stuff in here that allow little rocks to come out of, like down between the tread blocks, that can allow mud and snow and things like that to not stick in between these. So you've got the tread, as it flexes, it opens and closes as every single time this thing's rotating around, whatever's touching the ground, this whole tire flexes, opens and closes all of these tread blocks. Your siping doesn't open and close the same way because it's not as deep for one as your tread block, but you've got a large space in your tread block too to allow that movement. You've got a lot of good traction on an all-terrain tire. It's a really great all-around tire. You can get them in very large sizes. Some of them are up to 40 inches of diameter. A lot of times you can get 37. A lot of people are running 35s or 37s. It's just usually what you'll see after you build a truck, that tire size. The weight goes up. Your fuel economy suffers a little bit, but there's a compromise for everything. Do you want better performance on a tire? When it's off-road, when you're actually building a truck to go off-road, I would focus heavily on what kind of tire you're putting on it. Realistically, a lot of people will build a truck and put a tire on it for looks, but the tire is physically touching the ground and it's controlling the moving mass of what your truck is doing. You know, with if it's a big camper, if you're towing a trailer, this thing is touching the ground, and it'll either stop you and change your direction the way you want it to, or it won't, or it's not going to hold up as long as you need it to in a really bad environment. So it's very important to pay attention to what you're doing with tires. When you see a blowout on the road, you kind of want to see what caused that. There's a lot of retreads, there's a lot of different things you can do to save money, but it's not necessarily the best idea when it comes to safety and longevity of the tire. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's a lot of good instances where you'd want to use that, but when you start looking at tires, you kind of think about it maybe a little bit differently. kind of stepping up a little bit, there's a middle ground now with a lot of these companies. This is a Toyo RT Trail. It's a new RT Trail. This is a 37, 12.5 wide by 17-inch wheel diameter. Actually, this one is an 18 because this is from our Ram. We're running an HD wheel on that. But this is a 37, this is a 35, and this is a 33. So you can kind of see just the unloaded height difference in these. So 37, this is the middle ground between a mud terrain and an all-terrain. And when you look at the tread, you can kind of start to see the differences blend together. The tread blocks are a lot larger and flatter. The angles maybe not quite as drastic on this. Some of them are. You can see how on this one it's very exaggerated in the direction of travel. This one kind of slopes back, but the spacing in between these is far greater than the all-terrain. You've still got your siping in the large tread blocks, which is nice for not hydroplaning in rain and things like that. So you still have great traction. This tire has lasted extremely well. We got a set of these from Toyo to test on our Ram. It's a 1-ton Ram on 37s, and we've carried several campers on that truck that averaged about 2,000 pounds or more in the bed, as well as pulling a tandem axle covered trailer for all of the overland expos we did throughout the country. We've towed it all over the country with this tire. We've aired this tire down. The day after I put a brand new set of these on that truck, we drove up to Pagosa Springs in a blizzard. It's not a snow rated tire, but this tire actually did really, really well in the snow, better than I thought it would. So this is a great contender. I've started to see these a lot more. We've put them on a lot of customers' trucks. I'm very happy with the performance of this tire on the Toyo RT Trail. It's and then the sidewall. When you look at the sidewalls of these, I'll just move this one out of the way a little bit. You can see the sidewall is smooth on this, and it's a 20-inch wheel, so you have a very small amount of sidewall here. There's a lot of air pressure in this tire, so this tire can take a lot of load in the bed for a 1-ton truck. That's what it's designed for, rolling efficiency. But this is the most fragile part of your tire, of any tire, is the sidewall. You can see there's really nothing here protecting this. So if you were to go off-road and you wanted to air this thing down so you get sidewall flex, and all of your small bump compliancy, or not all of it, but a lot of your small bump compliancy on washboard roads and things like that can be absorbed and in this sidewall flex as you're driving over it when you're aired down. If you're aired up, this isn't going to flex as much. It's going to stay rigid, more rigid. So there's a lot of ride quality that can come from that. So as you see how slick down this is, you can see how fragile the sidewall of this might be. If you move to the all-terrain, you can kind of see now that there's shoulder lugs on here. Your shoulder lug is here, but you've got a sidewall lug that can be a traction device. You know, if you're in places like Moab and you're on slick rock and you're using your sidewall a lot and you're aired down, now the sidewall, the way the rubber is laid over the belts and in the carcass of the tire is designed differently to be a much stronger sidewall. You can air this down and it can flex quite a bit. And you can, the taller your sidewall is from here to the top of the tire, creates more room for it to flex and move with the ground and absorb that small bump compliance off of the ground. But you can also have somewhat of a traction aid here on the side with these lugs. Moving onto the RT Trail, the shoulder lugs get quite a bit larger, and they come down further onto the sidewall. Now, granted, this is a 37-inch tire, but on an 18-inch wheel, you can see the difference from the bead up to the top of the tire and how large that sidewall is. That's why tire diameter can be so important, because you've got so much more sidewall that can flex and move. And when you air the tire down far enough, your tread actually gets longer because the weight of the truck is pushing down on the tire and it's pushing that tire flatter onto the ground. So you're getting a longer traction pad on the ground, and it gets a little bit wider, but this doesn't get wider. The overall width of the tread itself doesn't get wider. The sidewall can get wider because you're squishing it out, but what you're actually asking for traction is getting longer on the ground with the weight as you air down. That's really good for sand. It's good for like chunky rocks. Even if you're going slow, you can kind of crawl and creep over things and you're not getting tossed all around the cab. All right, moving on to the mud terrain tire. This is the most aggressive style tire you'll see on a lot of these vehicles. A lot of people will build for looks alone because they like the way a mud terrain looks, and that's fine. But if you're wanting it to work in a specific way, the way we travel, a lot of us travel, you'll see a lot of different terrain, from highway to wet grass to sand to rock to mud to snow, maybe even all of those in the same trip. There are a handful of mud terrain tires that work better than others just because of the way the tread is designed. Now, this is a 35-inch diameter tire. The tread is 12.5 inches wide, and we're on a 17-inch rim. So you can kind of see the sidewall height from a 35-inch tire, from the sidewall, or from the bead of the wheel up to the top of the tread. You've got a lot of sidewall here. This is extremely thick. This is one of the more aggressive sidewalls that you can get on a really good handling tire for the road. This is probably one of my favorite tires, I think, for several reasons. Because of the way the treads are laid out, there's a very aggressive angle in the direction of travel. It's not a directional tire, which means it can be spun around and rotated to the other side of the truck, and the tread is the same. So if you look at the angle of this center tread, it is very aggressive, pointing in the direction of travel, so that's going to be really, really quiet. You can see how tall the tread lug is and how wide and how open these tread blocks are. So when it is loaded and you're aired down really, really far, as these tread blocks close together, there's a lot of room for material to come out of it, especially the shoulder lugs. You can see this big void in the middle of these shoulder lugs, and there's a lot of room for everything to get channeled out and away, no matter which direction you're going. So when you look at, the tread of the tire, its efficiency in rolling is going to be different than a street tire, to where your shoulder lugs, you'll get more noise from this over time, over a long period of time, as the tread wears down. There's a lot of sympathetic drag in the front end of a lot of these four-wheel drive vehicles. When all of your drivetrain is turning, whether you're in four-wheel drive or not, that creates drag on your tire. And it's a steering tire, so you're getting wear in different directions than you would if it's a drive tire on the back of the truck. So, and then the tread compounds can be different between different brands. With trying to just go off the cuff here and just get the most information out as I can, one of the reasons why we don't like to mount a tire back under the bed of a truck, no matter which one it is because this is still the most fragile part of your tire. If you have a spare tire underneath the bed of the truck or your SUV or whatever it may be, and this is facing the ground, all of this is facing the ground in harm's way. So if you come down off of something on the trail and you drag your sidewall across something, and maybe your tire is wet, and you slice that, you may not know it's flat when you need to go and rely on it. That's a lot of times why you'll see these on the back of a vehicle or in the bed. For one, it may not fit underneath anymore because it's a different diameter. But it's also in a very bad spot to have to use it and change it if you're sitting in a creek bed or in a mud hole somewhere that you can't get out of and you need to change your tire. So that's why we'll put these on somewhere, carry these somewhere else, but we want to protect that sidewall as much as possible. Something to look at, I've got this sitting next to our Land Cruiser here. So this is a 35-inch tire diameter. This is also a 35-inch diameter tire. This is a Yokohama mud terrain tire. I like this tire. It's worked out really good for us. But you can see the shape difference in the tread blocks, and this truck is extremely light. It's a little FJ40. I've got probably 25 to 28 pounds of pressure in this tire, so there's hardly any load on it. And there is no load on this. You can see the height difference in these two tires. They're both 35s. They're both exactly the same spec, same size wheel and everything. But there's a true height of these tires too between manufacturers. If you look at a BF Goodrich KM3, the tread blocks are much larger and more squared off, and there's far less siping in those, so they don't have as good of rain and snow traction as maybe this would. But that's personal preference. We've used those down in Baja, and they are a bomber tire. Great tire, but I wouldn't use it in the snow. Something like this I would use in the snow. This actually does really good in the snow, especially slushy snow, because the snow can get out of these voids real easily when you're on the road. They don't get as many miles as a street tire, maybe not as many miles as some all-terrain tires, but they're far better in any kind of mud or anything that's really sticky or heavy. They're able to clean themselves out really good. So it kind of just depends on what you realistically intend to use your truck for, what kind of trips you see, how much highway driving you're doing, how much rock driving you're doing, maybe sand and things like that. An all-terrain tire does really well in the sand. They don't dig as much as a mud terrain tire will. These will dig like a shovel sometimes, depending on the sand that you're in. An all-terrain tire, or the Rugged Trail, or the RT tire from Toyo, works really well in the sand and snow. So it kind of just depends on what you're wanting to use it for. So wanted to kind of give a quick video on some of the tires we use, some of the differences. All of these manufacturers have more in-depth specs on how many plies they are, you know, weights of the tire, things like that. That's all online on their websites that, you know, per your tire size that you need. You can pull all of that stuff up. If this was any kind of use for you, hopefully it was. You know, this is just some quick shop talk, some tech talk on some of the stuff that we're using. I'm glad it was working for you. If you've got any other questions, or you kind of want to toss some of these ideas around for your own build, give us a call here at TAV on our website. Go on our website and fill out the inquiry page. That comes directly to me, the guys up front. Kind of tells us a little bit about your truck, about you, what you're going to use it for, and that usually helps us get the conversation started on what you want to do for a build. That's tavllc.com. Obviously here on our YouTube channel, keep an eye on future videos that we'll be doing on some of the other gear that we're using around the shop and on our own trucks and our customers' trucks. Instagram is at TAVLLC, and if you send us a message there, we try to get back to you as quick as we can, but the best way to get a hold of us is on our website, and one of us will get back to you to try to answer your questions. I appreciate you watching, and keep an eye out for the next tech one.